For thousands of years, the pyramids of Giza have stood as one of the most iconic symbols of ancient ingenuity. But what if I told you that these towering marvels are surrounded by myths that have shaped our understanding for centuries, and many of them are completely wrong? From the mysterious lost city of Atlantis to the advanced technologies of ancient civilizations, our perception of history is often built on stories that crumble under closer scrutiny. Today, we're diving into 22 myths about ancient civilizations that have been debunked, revealing a far more fascinating and accurate picture of our past. What if the clues to understanding these societies have been hiding in plain sight all along, waiting for us to question what we think we know? Whether you're a history enthusiast or just curious about the truth behind these legends, this journey will challenge what you thought you knew and leave you with a deeper appreciation for the complexities of human history. Let's begin. The pyramids of Giza stand as one of the most iconic symbols of ancient Egypt, their towering structures often conjuring images of a civilization working in isolation. For centuries, the prevailing myth has been that the Egyptians alone built these marvels, relying on masses of slaves to carry out the backbreaking labor. But the truth is far more nuanced and far more fascinating. Archaeological discoveries have shattered this oversimplified narrative, revealing a story of collaboration, skill, and ingenuity that transcends borders. Excavations near the pyramids have uncovered workers' villages, complete with evidence of a well-organized labor force. These weren't slaves, but skilled laborers, craftsmen, engineers, and builders who were highly valued for their expertise. Tools, pottery, and even dietary remains suggest that these workers came from diverse regions, some traveling great distances to contribute to these monumental projects. This challenges the long-held belief that the pyramids were the product of a single, isolated culture. What's more, the engineering techniques used in pyramid construction were remarkably advanced, requiring a level of precision and planning that could only be achieved through collaboration. From quarrying massive stone blocks to aligning the structures with celestial precision, the pyramids are a testament to the collective knowledge of ancient societies. Far from being the work of a single group, they represent a fusion of ideas, skills, and technologies that likely drew on contributions from across the ancient world. This myth, while persistent, oversimplifies the complexity of ancient civilizations. It ignores the interconnectedness of cultures and the exchange of knowledge that defined the ancient world. By debunking this narrow view, we gain a deeper appreciation for the ingenuity and cooperation that made such incredible achievements possible. The pyramids weren't just built by Egyptians, they were built by humanity, a collaborative effort that continues to inspire awe thousands of years later. The legend of Atlantis has captivated imaginations for centuries, but was it ever a real place? The story originates from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who described Atlantis as a technologically advanced island nation that fell out of favor with the gods and was swallowed by the sea. It's a tale that's both dramatic and mysterious, which is why it's endured for over 2,000 years. Yet, despite countless expeditions, advanced technology, and decades of research, no physical evidence of Atlantis has ever been found. Not a single artifact, ruin, or geological feature matches Plato's description. So why does the myth persist? Some scholars suggest that Atlantis might have been a metaphor, a cautionary tale about hubris and the dangers of overreaching ambition. Others propose that it was inspired by real events, like the catastrophic volcanic eruption on the island of Thera around 1600 BCE, which devastated the Minoan civilization. The parallels are intriguing, but they don't confirm Atlantis's existence. Instead, they highlight how stories can evolve from real-world events, blending fact and fiction over time. This enduring fascination with Atlantis speaks to something deeper. humanity's love for the idea of lost worlds. It's a concept that taps into our curiosity and desire to uncover secrets from the past. But while Atlantis may remain a legend, it's a reminder of how myths can shape our understanding of history, even when they're not based in reality. And speaking of legendary cities, let's turn to another myth that has captured the world's imagination, the enigmatic El Dorado. Picture this, December 2012, a time when the world seemed to hold its breath. The internet was buzzing, doomsday preppers were stocking up, and countless theories swirled about the Mayan calendar supposedly predicting the end of the world. But here's the truth. The Mayans never actually forecasted an apocalypse. Their calendar, which ended on December 21st, was simply marking the conclusion of a grand cycle known as the Long Count. Think of it like flipping the last page of a book and starting a new one, not the end of the story itself. This myth stems from a classic case of misinterpretation. Ancient texts and artifacts are often cryptic, leaving room for modern imaginations to run wild. In reality, the Mayans were incredibly advanced in their understanding of time and astronomy. Their calendar systems tracked celestial events with remarkable precision, reflecting a deep connection to the cosmos. Far from predicting doom, they were marking the passage of time in a way that celebrated renewal and continuity. What's fascinating is how this myth reveals a broader pattern. Throughout history, misinterpretations of ancient cultures' knowledge have fueled countless misconceptions. The Mayans weren't the only ones. Their contemporaries and predecessors also possessed scientific insights that were ahead of their time. This invites us to reconsider how we view ancient civilizations, not as primitive or mystical, but as innovators whose achievements continue to inspire. The next time you hear a sensational claim about the past, it's worth digging a little deeper. You might just uncover a truth that's even more compelling than the myth. It's a common belief that ancient civilizations universally thought the Earth was flat, but the truth is far more fascinating. Contrary to this myth, many early cultures understood the Earth's spherical shape long before it became widely accepted. Take the ancient Greeks, for example. By the 5th century BCE, thinkers like Pythagoras and later Aristotle were already arguing that the Earth was round. Aristotle pointed to the curved shadow it cast on the moon during lunar eclipses as evidence. Similarly, in ancient India, scholars like Aryabhatta in the 5th century CE described the Earth as a spinning sphere, accurately calculating its circumference. So where did the flat Earth myth come from? Surprisingly, it wasn't the ancients who got it wrong, but medieval Europe. During the Middle Ages, some interpretations of religious texts led to the idea of a flat Earth, despite earlier knowledge from Greek and Roman scholars. This misunderstanding was later exaggerated in the 19th century, creating the false notion that flat Earth beliefs were widespread in antiquity. In reality, many ancient cultures were far more advanced in their understanding of the cosmos than we give them credit for. The Egyptians, for instance, used their knowledge of the stars to align their pyramids with remarkable precision. The Polynesians navigated vast stretches of the Pacific Ocean by reading the stars, waves, and even the flight patterns of birds, skills that required an understanding of the Earth's curvature. These achievements in astronomy and navigation were no accidents. They were the result of careful observation and centuries of accumulated wisdom. This leads us to another intriguing question. If ancient civilizations were so adept at understanding the heavens, what other myths about their knowledge of astronomy and navigation might we need to rethink? Let's explore that next. One of the most enduring images of Stonehenge is its mysterious stones towering over a group of robed druids performing ancient rituals under the moonlight. This iconic scene has been popularized in literature, film, and even modern-day ceremonies, firmly linking Stonehenge with the Druids in the public imagination. But here's the twist. Stonehenge was already thousands of years old by the time the Druids arrived on the scene. In fact, the monument dates back to around 3000 BCE, while the earliest evidence of the Druids doesn't appear until around 300 BCE. That's a gap of more than 2 millennia. So who really built this enigmatic structure and why? Theories about Stonehenge's purpose are as varied as they are fascinating. Some researchers suggest it served as an astronomical observatory, its stones perfectly aligned with the solstices to mark the changing seasons. Others propose it was a sacred burial ground, with remains found nearby hinting at its ceremonial significance. The truth is, Stonehenge likely served multiple purposes over its long history, evolving along with the cultures that interacted with it. What's undeniable is the sheer ingenuity and effort required to transport and arrange these massive stones, some of which weigh several tons and were brought from over 150 miles away. This wasn't the work of a single group with a single goal, but a testament to the collective ingenuity of ancient peoples over centuries. Stonehenge's construction remains one of humanity's greatest engineering marvels, and attributing it solely to the Druids oversimplifies its rich and complex history. Just as the stones themselves have weathered the test of time, so too does the mystery of their origins continue to captivate us. And as we peel back the layers of myth surrounding Stonehenge, we're reminded that many of the world's ancient monuments hold stories far more intricate than the legends we've come to associate with them. Next, we'll explore how other iconic sites have been similarly misunderstood, their true origins obscured by the passage of time and the power of storytelling. You've probably heard the claim that the Great Wall of China is so massive. It's the only human-made structure visible from space. It's a statement that's been repeated in textbooks, documentaries, and even casual conversations. But here's the truth. It's not actually visible from space, at least not with the naked eye. Even from low Earth orbit, the Great Wall blends into the natural landscape, barely distinguishable from the surrounding terrain. So how did this myth take hold? Part of it stems from the wall's sheer scale and cultural significance. Stretching over 13,000 miles, it's an astonishing feat of ancient engineering, symbolizing human resilience and ingenuity. But its visibility from space, that's more about the stories we tell than the physical reality. The myth reflects how the Great Wall has captured our imagination, becoming a symbol of human achievement. And while it might not be visible from orbit, the wall itself is no less remarkable. Constructed over centuries, it's a testament to the engineering prowess of ancient China. From its strategic watchtowers to its winding paths across rugged terrain, the Great Wall is a masterpiece of human effort. This myth also opens the door to a broader discussion about ancient engineering feats, how they've been exaggerated, misunderstood, or even underestimated over time. So, while the Great Wall might not be visible from space, its legacy is undeniably larger than life. It's often taken as fact that democracy was born in ancient Greece, but the truth is far more layered. While the Greeks, particularly the Athenians, are celebrated for their democratic system, they weren't the first to experiment with forms of collective governance. Long before Athens rose to prominence, societies in Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley were already developing early political structures that allowed communities to make decisions collectively. For example, in Mesopotamia, city-states like Sumer had assemblies where leaders were chosen by consensus, and in ancient India, republics like the Elixirs practiced forms of collective rule that gave voice to certain members of society. Athenian democracy, of course, remains a landmark achievement, but it's important to recognize its limitations. Only a small portion of the population, free, adult male citizens, could participate. Women, slaves, and foreign residents were entirely excluded, making it a far cry from the inclusive systems we associate with democracy today. Yet, the Athenian model laid the groundwork for many principles we still value: the idea of equal participation, the rule of law, and the power of debate. Democracy didn't emerge fully formed in one place or time. It's a concept that has evolved over centuries, shaped by countless cultures and civilizations. Understanding this broader history helps us appreciate the complexity of political systems and dispels the myth that democracy was a purely Greek invention. With that in mind, let's turn to another fascinating aspect of ancient governance: how myths about political systems often overshadow the reality of how they functioned. The Aztecs are often painted as bloodthirsty savages, their reputation forever tied to the practice of human sacrifice. But while their rituals may seem gruesome through a modern lens, they were far more complex and deeply rooted in their worldview. For the Aztecs, these sacrifices were not acts of cruelty but sacred obligations to the gods, essential for maintaining cosmic balance. Their entire cosmology revolved around the idea that the gods had sacrificed themselves to create the world, and it was humanity's duty to repay that debt with offerings of blood and life. This wasn't mindless violence, it was a profound spiritual act tied to their understanding of the universe. When European colonizers arrived in the 16th century, they seized on these practices to portray the Aztecs as barbaric, a narrative that conveniently justified their conquest and destruction of the empire. Spanish accounts often exaggerated the scale and nature of these sacrifices, painting a picture of unrelenting savagery. But this perspective ignores the incredible sophistication of Aztec society. They built one of the most advanced civilizations in the Americas, with towering pyramids, intricate artwork, and a highly organized system of governance. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, was a marvel of engineering, with canals, aqueducts, and bustling markets that rivaled European cities of the time. It's important to recognize that the Aztecs were not defined solely by their religious practices. They were innovators, artists, and administrators whose contributions to Mesoamerican culture were immense. Reducing them to a single aspect of their society does a disservice to their legacy. And it's worth noting that the Aztecs were not alone in their ritual practices. Many Mesoamerican civilizations, like the Maya and the Zapotec, also engaged in sacrifices as part of their religious traditions. These practices were a shared cultural feature, not an anomaly. By understanding the Aztecs in their full complexity, we can move beyond simplistic myths and appreciate the richness of their civilization on its own terms. Picture this: flames engulfing one of the most iconic centers of knowledge in human history, the legendary Library of Alexandria. It's a scene that's been etched into our collective imagination, a single catastrophic event wiping out centuries of wisdom in one fiery blow. But here's the truth: the downfall of the Library of Alexandria wasn't the result of one dramatic moment. It was a slow, painful decline shaped by a series of events over hundreds of years. Contrary to popular belief, the library's destruction wasn't caused by a single fire or even one conqueror's act of vengeance. Instead, it faced repeated damage and neglect from political conflicts, shifting power dynamics, and even natural disasters. For example, during Julius Caesar's time, a fire did break out in the harbor, damaging part of the library's vast collection. But that was just one chapter in its long, tragic story. Over the centuries, additional losses occurred due to invasions, religious strife, and simple administrative neglect. By the time the library faded into history, it was the result of countless small blows, not one grand catastrophe. The loss of the Library of Alexandria is often described as a turning point for human knowledge, and in many ways it was. This was no ordinary library. It was a hub of intellectual exchange, housing countless scrolls and texts from across the ancient world. Scholars from diverse cultures gathered here to study philosophy, astronomy, medicine, and more. The destruction of such a repository meant the loss of irreplaceable works, some of which were never recovered. Imagine the untapped ideas, the forgotten discoveries, the insights that might have shaped the course of history if they had survived. Yet, even in its absence, the library's legacy endures. It remains a symbol of humanity's quest for knowledge, its ability to preserve and share ideas across generations. The very idea of the Library of Alexandria inspires us today, reminding us of the importance of protecting and valuing our intellectual heritage. Its story also challenges us to rethink how we view the preservation of knowledge. It wasn't just about one fire or one moment. It was about the slow erosion of resources, attention, and care over time. This myth about the library's destruction also leads us to a broader question. How much of ancient knowledge has been lost to history, and how much of what we think we know is shaped by myths like these? The Library of Alexandria is just one example of how our understanding of the past can be clouded by dramatic narratives, even when the reality is far more complex. As we uncover the truth, we get closer to appreciating the true depth and richness of human history. Picture this: a Viking warrior, towering and fierce, standing on the prow of a longship, his horned helmet gleaming in the cold Nordic sun. It's an image that's been burned into our collective imagination for centuries, but here's the twist: it's completely wrong. The idea of Vikings wearing horned helmets is one of the most enduring myths about ancient civilizations, yet it has no basis in historical fact. So, where did this iconic image come from? Believe it or not, it traces back to the 19th century, specifically to costume designs for Richard Wagner's opera The Ring Cycle. These dramatic, over-the-top costumes were meant to evoke a sense of grandeur and mystery, not historical accuracy, and somehow they became ingrained in popular culture as the definitive look of a Viking. In reality, Viking helmets were far more practical. Archaeologists have uncovered several examples of Viking headgear, and none of them feature horns. Why? Because horns on a helmet would be a liability in battle, not an advantage. They'd catch on weapons, make the helmet heavier, and generally get in the way. Instead, Viking helmets were sleek, functional, and designed with survival in mind. Most were made of iron or leather, with a simple dome shape to protect the skull and sometimes a nose guard to shield the face. These were warriors who valued efficiency and practicality above all else. But the myth of the horned helmet isn't just about getting the fashion wrong. It's a reflection of how easy it is to romanticize the past. Vikings were much more than the caricatures we see in movies or operas. They were skilled shipbuilders, traders, explorers, and even poets. Their longships, with their shallow drafts and symmetrical designs, allowed them to navigate both open seas and shallow rivers, giving them unparalleled mobility. They traded goods as far as the Middle East and established settlements in places like Iceland, Greenland, and even North America centuries before Columbus. Their society was complex, with intricate laws, a rich oral tradition, and a pantheon of gods that influenced everything from their daily lives to their raids. By focusing on the horned helmet myth, we miss the bigger picture of who the Vikings really were and what they achieved. Their legacy isn't about flashy costumes. It's about innovation, adaptability, and a spirit of exploration that reshaped the medieval world. And speaking of myths about ancient warriors, this brings us to another fascinating misconception: the idea that ancient soldiers relied solely on brute strength rather than strategy and technology. But that's a story for another time. The idea that ancient Egyptians worshipped cats as gods is one of the most widespread myths about their civilization. While it's true that cats held a special place in Egyptian society, they weren't actually deities themselves. Instead, they were revered as sacred animals, deeply intertwined with the spiritual and daily lives of the people. Cats were seen as protectors not just of homes and granaries, but also of the divine order they believed governed the universe. Their ability to control pests like mice and snakes made them invaluable to a society that relied heavily on agriculture. Over time, this practical role evolved into a symbolic one. Cats became associated with deities like Bastet, the goddess of home, fertility, and protection, who was often depicted with the head of a lioness or a domestic cat. So, while cats weren't worshipped as gods outright, they were viewed as earthly representatives of divine power, embodying qualities like grace, vigilance, and loyalty. This nuanced relationship between animals and spirituality in ancient Egypt reveals just how deeply interconnected their world was, a world where the sacred wasn't confined to temples but was woven into everyday life. This leads us to another layer of myth-making, the way ancient religious practices are often oversimplified or misunderstood. It's a reminder that the past is rarely as straightforward as we might imagine. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are often celebrated as one of the most captivating marvels of the ancient world, a verdant oasis said to have risen above the desert sands. Described in ancient texts as a lush, tiered paradise with cascading waterfalls and exotic plants, they've captured imaginations for centuries. But here's the twist: despite their fame as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, there's no physical evidence that they ever existed in Babylon. Not a single artifact, inscription, or architectural trace has been found to confirm their presence in the city. Some scholars argue that the gardens might have been located in Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, where King Sennacherib was known for his elaborate water systems and gardens. Others suggest they could be purely mythical, a product of ancient storytelling meant to symbolize the grandeur of Babylon. This idea isn't far-fetched, given how often ancient cultures used tales of incredible feats to inspire awe and convey cultural ideals. The Hanging Gardens might just be one of those stories, a testament to the power of human imagination and the desire to create legends. This myth serves as a fascinating reminder of how history and storytelling often intertwine, blurring the line between fact and fiction. It also invites us to question why certain tales endure and what they reveal about the societies that told them. Speaking of enduring tales, there are plenty of other ancient wonders that come with their own myths and mysteries, each offering a glimpse into the beliefs and aspirations of the past. Picture this: the once mighty Roman Empire, stretching from the shores of Britain to the deserts of North Africa, collapsing in a single, catastrophic moment. It's a dramatic image, but the truth is far more complex. The fall of Rome wasn't an overnight event, it was a slow unraveling that took centuries, shaped by a web of internal and external pressures. Economic instability played a huge role. The empire's finances were stretched thin by constant warfare, heavy taxation, and a growing reliance on foreign mercenaries. Add to that the strain of maintaining such a vast territory, and you've got a recipe for decline. Then there were the invasions. The Huns, Goths, Vandals, and other groups didn't just knock on Rome's door, they burst through it, chipping away at the empire's borders bit by bit. But it wasn't just outside forces. Internal strife, political corruption, and a series of ineffective leaders weakened Rome from within. The empire became a shadow of its former self, until in 476, the last Roman emperor in the West was deposed. Yet, even then, the story doesn't end. The Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire, carried on the Roman legacy for nearly another 1,000 years, proving that Rome's influence never truly vanished. This myth about Rome's sudden fall ties into a broader theme, the idea that great empires collapse in a single dramatic moment. In reality, it's rarely that simple. Whether it's Rome, the Mayan civilization, or the fall of ancient Egypt, decline is almost always a gradual process shaped by a mix of factors. So, the next time you hear someone say Rome fell overnight, you'll know the truth is far more nuanced and far more fascinating. The ancient Greeks are often celebrated as the pioneers of rational thought. the architects of philosophy, and the champions of logic. Figures like Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato are household names, synonymous with the pursuit of reason and wisdom. But here's the twist: while they certainly laid the groundwork for Western philosophy, the ancient Greeks were far from being solely rational thinkers. Their world was one where mythology, superstition, and divine intervention played just as significant a role as logic and debate. Take their religious practices, for example. The Greeks worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, each governing aspects of nature, human emotion, and daily life. Oracles, like the famous one at Delphi, were consulted for crucial decisions, and omens were interpreted with utmost seriousness. Even in their philosophical works, you'll find references to the divine. Plato, for instance, spoke of the demiurge, a divine craftsman responsible for creating the cosmos. This blend of reason and reverence shows that rationality in ancient Greece wasn't about rejecting the supernatural, but rather about finding ways to understand it within a broader framework. What's fascinating is how science and religion coexisted in Greek society. Thinkers like Pythagoras delved into mathematics and music theory, yet he also founded a mystical cult that believed in the transmigration of souls. Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, emphasized observation and diagnosis, but he also attributed some illnesses to the wrath of the gods. This duality wasn't seen as contradictory. Instead, it reflected a nuanced understanding of the world, where rationality and spirituality were two sides of the same coin. This myth about the ancient Greeks being purely rational thinkers overlooks the richness of their culture. It's a reminder that even in societies known for their intellectual achievements, human thought is rarely one-dimensional. The Greeks' ability to embrace both reason and mythology highlights the complexity of their worldview, offering us a more complete picture of how ancient civilizations navigated the mysteries of existence. And as we explore other myths about intellectual traditions, it's worth keeping this balance in mind because history, much like life, is rarely black and white. One of the most persistent myths about the Indus Valley civilization is the idea that it operated without a central government. At first glance, this assumption seems plausible. After all, their script remains undeciphered, and we lack the kind of royal monuments or palaces found in other ancient societies. But when we look closer, the evidence tells a different story. The cities of the Indus Valley, like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, were marvels of urban planning. Streets laid out in precise grids, advanced drainage systems, and standardized brick sizes all point to a high level of organization. Could such sophistication really have emerged without some form of centralized authority? It's unlikely. What's particularly fascinating about the Indus Valley is how they achieved this level of coordination. Unlike the pharaohs of Egypt or the kings of Mesopotamia, there's no clear evidence of a single ruler or royal family. Instead, scholars suggest that the civilization may have been governed by a collective or council, managing resources and infrastructure in a way that prioritized communal well-being. Their focus wasn't on glorifying individuals, but on maintaining a functional, thriving society. This approach is reflected in their extensive trade networks, which stretched from Mesopotamia to the Arabian Peninsula, showcasing their ability to organize and sustain complex economic systems. Of course, the absence of deciphered written records makes it challenging to fully understand how their governance worked. We're left to piece together clues from their material culture, which speaks of a society that valued order and equality. Unlike other ancient civilizations, there's little evidence of stark social hierarchies or monumental architecture dedicated to rulers. Instead, the Indus Valley seems to have been a place where practicality and collective effort took precedence. This unique approach to governance challenges our assumptions about what an ancient civilization should look like, and invites us to rethink the diversity of human societies in the past. As we consider the achievements of the Indus Valley, it's worth reflecting on how myths about ancient urban societies often shape our understanding. Could it be that our modern expectations of power and authority cloud our ability to see the ingenuity of civilizations that operated differently? The Indus Valley stands as a powerful reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all model for how societies organize themselves. Their legacy of trade, urban planning, and communal governance continues to inspire and intrigue, offering a fresh perspective on the complexity of human history. Here's the next section of the script, carefully crafted to align with your guidelines and outline. We often picture ancient Chinese alchemists huddled in laboratories perfecting gunpowder for the battlefield. But here's the twist: gunpowder wasn't initially a weapon of war. In fact, its origins are far more peaceful. Around the 9th century, Chinese scholars and alchemists were experimenting with mixtures of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal, not to create explosives, but to develop elixirs believed to grant immortality. Imagine the surprise when these experiments led to something entirely different, a volatile substance that could ignite with a burst of light and sound. At first, this discovery wasn't seen as a tool for destruction, but rather as a fascinating novelty, used in fireworks for celebrations and ceremonies. Over time, though, the practical applications of gunpowder began to shift. By the 10th century, Chinese military strategists started to recognize its potential, incorporating it into flamethrowers, bombs, and eventually cannons. This marked a turning point in warfare, not just in China but across the globe. The spread of gunpowder technology revolutionized armies, reshaping battlefields and altering the course of history. Yet, it's important to remember that this innovation was rooted in curiosity and exploration, not a desire for conquest. The story of gunpowder is just one example of ancient China's remarkable technological advancements. From the compass to papermaking, many of their inventions had profound impacts on the world, often evolving in ways their creators never imagined. It's a reminder that history is rarely straightforward. What begins as a quest for one purpose can lead to entirely unexpected outcomes. Speaking of inventions, let's explore another myth that challenges our understanding of ancient ingenuity. This section introduces the myth, explains its origins, and transitions smoothly to the next topic, all while maintaining a balanced tone and engaging narrative. The Great Sphinx of Giza, with its enigmatic gaze and lion's body, has long been synonymous with the pyramids, leading many to assume they were built simultaneously. But is this really the case? While the Sphinx is undeniably ancient, its precise age has been a subject of heated debate among scholars. Some theories suggest it was carved during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, around 2500 BC, making it roughly contemporary with the second pyramid at Giza. Others argue it could be even older, pointing to erosion patterns that might hint at a much earlier origin, possibly predating the dynastic era of Egypt. What's fascinating is that the Sphinx may have undergone significant restoration over the centuries. Evidence shows that parts of it were buried under sand for long periods, and later rulers like Thutmose IV took steps to excavate and repair it. This raises questions about how much of the Sphinx we see today is original and how much has been altered or restored. Its purpose also remains shrouded in mystery. Was it a guardian figure, a symbol of royal power, or something else entirely? The Sphinx's silence only deepens its allure, leaving us to piece together clues from its weathered features and the history surrounding it. This brings us to another intriguing question. How many other ancient statues and monuments hold secrets we've yet to uncover? As we explore these mysteries, the Sphinx stands as a reminder that even the most iconic structures of antiquity still have stories to tell. And as we peel back the layers of time, we uncover not just facts, but also the myths and legends that continue to captivate us. It's easy to assume that the ancient Greeks wrote their plays simply as a form of entertainment, something to pass the time or provide a good laugh. But the truth is, Greek theater was far more than just amusement. These plays were a powerful medium for exploring ideas that shaped society. From politics and philosophy to religion and morality, Greek drama tackled themes that were deeply woven into the fabric of their culture. The theater wasn't just a place to escape reality, it was a space for reflection and debate. Playwrights like Sophocles and Euripides used their works to challenge the status quo, question the gods, and examine human nature. Take, for example, Antigone, which grapples with the conflict between individual conscience and state authority, or the Bacchae, which explores the dangers of denying divine power. These weren't just stories, they were conversations with the audience about the world they lived in. Theater also played a central role in civic life. Festivals like the City Dionysia weren't just cultural events, they were communal experiences that reinforced shared values and ideas. Performances were part of religious ceremonies, and attendance was seen as a civic duty. In a society without mass media, theater was a way to educate and unite the people, sparking discussions that resonated long after the curtains fell. The influence of Greek drama extends far beyond ancient times. Its themes and structures have shaped Western literature, theater, and even film. The concept of tragedy and comedy, the use of dramatic irony, and the exploration of universal human struggles all trace their roots back to the Greek stage. It's a testament to how these works were never just entertainment. They were a mirror held up to society, reflecting its complexities and challenges. And speaking of reflections on culture, this leads us to another fascinating area: the myths surrounding ancient arts and how they've shaped our understanding of history. The Nazca lines have long sparked imaginations, with some suggesting these massive geoglyphs were the work of extraterrestrial beings. This theory gained traction because of the sheer scale and precision of the designs, which can only be fully appreciated from the air. But the truth is far more grounded and no less fascinating. These intricate lines and figures were created by the Nazca people, who thrived in southern Peru between 200 BC and 600 CE. Far from being the markers of alien visitors, they were likely part of ritualistic practices or astronomical observations, a testament to the Nazca's deep connection to their environment and cosmology. The techniques used to create these geoglyphs reveal the remarkable ingenuity of ancient civilizations. The Nazca simply removed the darker surface layer of pebbles to expose the lighter soil beneath, a process that required careful planning and precise execution. This method allowed the lines to endure for centuries, resisting erosion from the region's dry climate and stable winds. What's astonishing is that the Nazca achieved this without modern tools or aerial views, relying instead on their knowledge of geometry and their ability to scale designs across vast distances. This myth highlights a recurring theme in how we interpret ancient mysteries: the tendency to attribute incredible feats to forces beyond human capability. Yet every time we uncover evidence that underscores the creativity and resourcefulness of ancient societies. The Nazca lines are a reminder that humanity's ancestors were not primitive, but rather innovative problem solvers who left behind enduring legacies. As we explore more of these ancient enigmas, it's worth appreciating the stories they tell about the people who created them, rather than the myths that obscure their true brilliance. It's often assumed that ancient Egyptian medicine was rudimentary, little more than superstition mixed with trial and error. But the truth reveals a civilization far ahead of its time in understanding the human body and treating illness. Ancient Egyptians were pioneers in the field of medicine, with practices that laid the groundwork for modern healthcare. Their knowledge of anatomy was surprisingly advanced, honed through the meticulous process of mummification, which required a deep understanding of the body's internal systems. This familiarity with the human structure even allowed them to perform surgeries, including procedures to treat fractures and dental issues. One of the most fascinating aspects of their medical expertise is the extensive use of herbal remedies. Egyptians meticulously documented their treatments in medical papyri, detailed texts that serve as some of the earliest medical records in history. The Ebers Papyrus, for example, contains over 700 remedies for ailments ranging from headaches to digestive disorders. These documents reveal a sophisticated approach to healthcare, blending practical treatments with early forms of pharmacology. Ingredients like honey, garlic, and willow bark were not only effective but also laid the foundation for many modern medicines. What's even more remarkable is how their practices reflected a holistic understanding of health. Egyptians believed in the interconnectedness of the body and mind, emphasizing prevention as much as cure. They advocated for cleanliness, balanced diets, and even physical exercise principles that are still cornerstones of modern wellness. Far from being primitive, their medical system was a testament to ingenuity and observation, influencing civilizations for centuries to come. For centuries, the Trojan War has been seen as a tale of pure myth, a story conjured by Homer to captivate audiences with gods, heroes, and epic battles. But what if this legendary conflict had more truth to it than we've been led to believe? The excavations at the ancient site of Troy in modern-day Turkey have revealed layers of destruction and rebuilding, suggesting that a real war or series of conflicts might have inspired Homer's famous epics. While the details in the Iliad and the Odyssey are undoubtedly embellished, archaeological findings point to a historical core that's hard to ignore. This blend of myth and history is a hallmark of ancient storytelling. Stories like the Trojan War weren't just entertainment, they were a way to preserve cultural memory and explain complex events. The tales of Achilles, Hector, and the Trojan horse may be larger than life, but they likely stemmed from real struggles over trade routes, territory, and power. The city of Troy, strategically located at the crossroads of major civilizations, would have been a prime target for such conflicts. What's truly fascinating is how the Trojan War has endured in our collective imagination. From ancient Greece to modern Hollywood, its themes of heroism, betrayal, and fate continue to resonate. This mingling of fact and fiction reminds us that myths often have roots in reality, even if those roots are shrouded in legend. As we explore other ancient myths, we'll see how this blend of history and storytelling has shaped our understanding of the past. It's easy to assume that ancient civilizations existed in isolation, each developing their cultures, technologies, and traditions entirely on their own. But here's the truth: the ancient world was far more interconnected than we often give it credit for. From vast overland routes to bustling maritime pathways, civilizations thousands of miles apart were constantly exchanging goods, ideas, and even people. Think about the Silk Road, the legendary network of trade routes that stretched from China to the Mediterranean. This wasn't just a path for silk and spices, it was a highway of cultural exchange where religions, philosophies, and technologies spread across continents. And it wasn't just overland travel. Maritime trade routes linked civilizations across the Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean, and beyond. For example, ancient Egyptian artifacts have been found as far away as Scandinavia, and Roman coins have turned up in India. These discoveries paint a picture of a world where borders were more fluid and connections more frequent than we might imagine. The Phoenicians, master navigators of the ancient world, sailed as far as Britain, trading goods and influencing cultures along the way. Even in the Americas, evidence suggests that pre-Columbian civilizations had trade networks spanning vast distances. This interconnectedness wasn't just about commerce, it was about ideas. The spread of Buddhism along the Silk Road, the influence of Greek art in India, and the adoption of Arabic numerals in Europe all show how cultures were shaped by their interactions. Far from being isolated, ancient civilizations were part of a dynamic, interconnected web that influenced their development in profound ways. Understanding this interconnectedness challenges the myth that these societies existed in isolation and reminds us of the shared history that binds humanity together. So, we've journeyed through 22 myths about ancient civilizations, dismantling misconceptions one by one. From the idea that the pyramids were built by enslaved workers to the belief that the ancient world was technologically primitive, these myths have shaped how we view the past, often in ways that are far from accurate. But why does this matter? Understanding the truth about ancient civilizations isn't just about correcting the record. It's about seeing humanity's story in its full, vibrant complexity. Myths, while captivating, can obscure the ingenuity, diversity, and resilience of our ancestors. By separating fact from fiction, we not only honor their legacy, but also gain a clearer lens through which to view our own world. History is more than a collection of dates and artifacts, it's a dialogue between the past and the present. When we challenge popular narratives and seek out evidence, we become active participants in that conversation. It's a reminder that history isn't static. It's constantly evolving as new discoveries are made and old assumptions are questioned. So, the next time you hear a sweeping claim about the ancient world, take a moment to dig deeper. What's the evidence? Whose voices are being amplified and whose are being left out? As the historian Mark Bloch once said, "The past is, by definition, a datum which nothing in the future will change." But the knowledge of the past is something progressive which is constantly transforming and perfecting itself. Let that idea inspire you to explore history with curiosity and a critical eye. If you've enjoyed this journey through the myths and truths of ancient civilizations, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. What surprised you the most? What other historical mysteries would you like to see explored? And if you're craving more deep dives like this, hit that subscribe button. There's always more to uncover. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep discovering the stories that shape our world.